Digital storytelling with recipients of the Basic Income Pilot. So we wanted to create our own digital story in order to convey what our research was trying to say, in order to put our voice within this type of medium, and also kind of give an example of what we wanted our participants to create.
So thinking about basic income, I just want to explain briefly what the program entails. So approximately 4,000 people from across 3 communities in Ontario were chosen for the pilot project. They receive funds on a monthly basis, and if they're enrolled in ODSP or OW, they are able to keep their benefits and the child tax benefit. And participants who work have to pay back 50 cents on the dollar, and those receiving CPP or EI would pay back dollar for dollar on the amounts.
So identifying the potentially fruitful empirical study within social work, we wanted to analyze what the research is already doing. So the Ontario government, they are really missing the participant's voice. The proposed research by the government is through a third party. They'll use mixed methods approach with a quantitative survey and qualitative interviews and focus groups. But really their research is trying to deduce it to the evaluation of the program. So their objectives are different than our research.
So our working title is Digital Storytelling with Recipients of Basic Income. And in terms of social work, a principle for social workers is our responsibility to our clients and to their voice. And so the pilot project's objective is to evaluate the program and doesn't put the voice of the participants at the forefront. So our research the goal is to have the participants' voices and experiences be heard, and then to make those voices and stories accessible to the general public.
So we are really in the constructivist camp. So as social constructivists, we think that knowledge is constructed through human activity and individuals create meaning through these interactions. So they are proposing that each individual mentally constructs the world of experience through cognitive processes, and social constructionism has a social rather than an individual focus. So we want to co-create this knowledge with our participants, and that's our belief in terms of how we come to our empirical study.
So me, Caitlin, my relationship to the research topic is I strongly believe in the power of stories to change the way we live and to see our lives. I've worked for the last 6 years at a community development agency, and I've seen pretty intimately the dehumanizing factors of poverty and social assistance. So I'm really interested in new ways of supporting folks and new opportunities to hear their stories and hear what really matters to them.
And for me, Sandra, I really struggled with how social inequality has become this norm in society. So I'm more optimistic about how we can create an equitable society, and I really want to be part of that change. So I believe that research can really draw us to that, and that government intervention can be that positive change. Also, I view this in my own community. One of my clients actually was accepted for this pilot project. So I can really see the difference it makes when he tells me about now he's able to pay some of his debts off and still work. And a lot of that is very positive in his life.
So in terms of the literature review and the gaps, we found that there was a really major gap around user voice. So there were lots of studies about basic income, but none that really, or very few that really focused on the voice of the participants. So the lack of voice given to recipients needs to be addressed, and through digital storytelling, the lived experiences of the recipients of the pilot project can become a part of history. So digital storytelling is one method of preserving local history, and we know that these digital storytelling archives are micro-histories within each community which can be preserved.
So we, as we've already mentioned, are creating a digital story. So this will involve social workers during the digital storytelling process. So participants will have access to social supports if they need it. And our research will really show how digital storytelling can be fostered in order to build the community and build empathy within the broader society. We really want to foster these relational experiences with our participants, and our intention is to really reach further beyond the stories of the few individuals to really have an impact on the rest of society, especially Canada and Ontario, as the pilot project moves forward. And we're kind of in this time period where it's up in the air with the election, how this would really play out in the following years, which would really be shown within our research.
So in terms of our qualitative question, it is, how does the implementation of digital storytelling impact user voice and experience in the Ontario Basic Income pilot project? So as the project is anticipated to last for 3 years, we would invite users to participate in an annual digital storytelling workshop. Because we're coming from an anti-oppressive framework, we will really have an intentionality set out to have the research sample be representative of and that voices of people of color are elevated to ensure that their experiences are documented in the project. Folks would be taught technical skills and given open-ended questions to guide their creation of the digital storytelling archives.
And our quantitative question is, what are the effects of digital storytelling on user understanding and experience within basic income? So in order to create or complete the quantitative study, the participants will have a survey, and we're trying to get the entire population for the control group and compare that to those who are participating in digital storytelling. So when we analyze the data, we are hoping to see that there's a positive effect of digital storytelling and the creation of knowledge with basic income.
So the theory I mentioned before, we are coming from an anti-oppressive theoretical framework. And this is anti-oppressive theory is a tool to understand and respond to the complexity of the experience of oppression. It's also a way to challenge the way that people are treated based on their identities. So in this particular example, a person experiencing poverty is one identity that someone experiencing oppression would be feeling. So anti-oppressive thinking allows us to know some more solid and less blaming answers as to why people experience things like homelessness. And through elevating user voice, that's really a cornerstone of anti-oppressive theoretical framework, allowing people to speak for themselves, to interpret and to understand their own lived experiences, which is something that digital storytelling really fosters.
So other theories that will inform our practice will be intersectionality. So we mentioned before that we wanted to elevate the voices of those living within the margins. So this would include feminist theory and critical race theory, as well as how that can be implemented within basic income. So we want to consider the labor market participation for women if basic income is accessible. We also want to consider how the experiences of those people who are people of color, if their experiences are any different by having a less stigmatizing sort of program in place.
So we think that these methods are appropriate because lived experiences from a storytelling perspective goes along with narrative methodology and kind of storying your experience. The audience is experiencing the experience along with the person who is creating the digital storytelling archive. And the participants are narrating how they experience the phenomenon. So there isn't the social worker or researcher inserting their own biases and understandings into the process.
In terms of sampling, we want to give a survey to the entire population. So that would be everybody involved with the basic income. We would get this information from the Ontario government after, of course, we got consent to get the release of information. We would give them like mail-in surveys that also have other information like a toll-free number for those who want to call in with their responses, or an online survey for those who are tech savvy. It would be a really inclusive way to try to get a good response rate. Then we would have our question at the end of the survey that invites participants to do a digital story. So if those people want to be involved with the process, we would be able to contact them with whatever method they found most appropriate. Afterwards, we would do another survey at the end of our workshops. So workshops would be run maybe once a year or every couple of workshops every year in order to really show the process of the pilot project. And the last survey would really compare the two groups, the control group of those who created a digital story and the rest of the population involved with basic income.
So in terms of outcomes that we are expecting or that we think we will see for our quantitative study, we expect that digital storytelling would have a positive impact on user experience of the pilot project. Through allowing people to story their experiences, they can think, reflect on them, have more personal agency, and more fully understand the impacts that the pilot project of basic income is having on their lives. In terms of qualitative outcomes, we are expecting service users will feel more empowered in that their voice is documented throughout the project. We expect that their experience of the pilot project will be one of greater engagement and understanding, in that they'll be asked to reflect on the impact that basic income is having on their lives. There's also the possibility that digital stories could be used in government or public advocacy, and that would serve to increase service user sense of personal efficacy and political engagement.
So this is what we created during our art space class. What we have here is Caitlin and I creating this art together. Similar to the digital story, it's very collaborative, but in the end it ended up being very different. So it might start out very collaboratively within the workshops where participants and social workers or researchers would be involved in the process. However, by the end of it, it would be very individual, and it would be based on their own personalities, what they want their voices to really reflect in their lives, and their experience with basic income.